What's up, everybody? Peter Ariz here alongside D Money. Welcome into Group Chat Football Live, our daily show where we talk portal movement, coaching movement, recruiting across the landscape of college football. Really excited for this show today, D. Happy New Year's Eve to you. I know you're out there in Central Florida right now with the family, but we're not missing a beat here on Group Chat Football Live. How you doing?
Doing awesome, man. Got college football on the other room. Michigan, Alabama, interesting game. Michigan off to a really fast start there. Milroe having some problems protecting the ball. Portal's cooking. You got high school recruits there. Actually, not too far from where I am right now, practicing for the Under Armour game. So a lot of action at all levels of college football. Coaching changes. This is going to be a hot January, right? I mean, maybe not in the weather, but in terms of movement this January, I think is going to be probably the most active we've seen, just because of the way the portal's shaping up and some of the things going on. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of movement from these bowl teams, these playoff teams, which extends the portal window and makes it a very hot time.
No, we get a lot of Miami fans in here from our work on Canes Inside, and Miami had a big move today. Lance Guidry, the defensive coordinator, has been fired. So Miami, that job opening up now could be a really interesting thing in terms of shifting this carousel, because it's been a little stagnant the last week plus here as a lot of the top jobs have been hired. But now after bowl season concludes here and then the playoffs, of course, expect this thing to ratchet back up again.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think makes it unique is you have so many teams that are getting that portal window extended because of the playoffs that goes even further than the bowl extension. I think there's going to just be a very, very hot window here, extended window, and then you go right into spring and you get the spring window. So the portal's not going to stop. A lot of movement already. Some interesting names. And to me, one thing I've noticed here in the portal in general, a lot of good fits. We'll talk about a couple here today, but I like where some of these guys are going that maybe had a lot of talent, didn't work out the first time, and going to a second stop. The second stop for a lot of these guys makes a lot of sense for both sides.
So again, I know we have a lot of Canes fans already in here in the comments, and we'll start with a guy here that is going to be visiting Miami here, Martavius French, linebacker, all-conference guy at UTSA this year. And you see that list of visits there. It's a very interesting list. It's kind of a who's who of social media clicks these days. As you got Colorado, Coach Prime, you got UNC, Bill Belichick, then you have Miami there, and then you have UCF, West Virginia. So it's all over the place here, right? You have, like I said, Colorado, they're looking to reload. They have a bunch of holes that they need to fill defensively. Miami, we know what they need is pretty much at every position. UNC, Bill Belichick wants you. That's always kind of something on the radar because a lot of these guys they've been bringing in have NFL body types and NFL type talent. But this is a guy in Martavius French who was very productive at UTSA this year, signed with Tennessee coming out of high school, was actually suspended earlier this year at UTSA as well. So not a guy who has had the perfect path to where he is now, but extremely talented. And at the end of the day, someone who looks like he's going to get an opportunity to get back once again with a big-time program.
Yeah, so you see UTSA, you think of kind of overachiever. This is a four-star, highly recruited player that's just sort of gone an alternate route. The JUCO route had a suspension when he signed with Tennessee and then had a suspension here at the beginning of the season with UTSA, which ended up getting worked out. And I believe he was cleared. Obviously, he played the whole season and had a great year with 80 tackles and 17 tackles for loss, which was the most among inside linebackers. For a guy that's not playing on the edge, 17 tackles for loss is a huge number. He gets in the backfield, great instincts. Really an interesting guy. I watched his game against Texas, which of course is going to be the closest competition to what you see at a UNC, Miami, Colorado. And he looked, first of all, physically like he belonged with Texas, which was one of the most physically impressive teams in the country, just from a body type, kind of talent standpoint. On top of that, you're also looking at a guy with tremendous instincts. I mean, just watching that game, there was a wheel route that was picked. I think that was the design of the play was to go to the wheel route. He picked it up. They ended up going elsewhere. He was all over the field making tackles. He graded out very high in that game. That was a 72.7 grade for that Texas game. One of his best games of the year was against the best competition, and it looked that way. That's from Pro Football Focus, but it looked that way when I watched it. Good tackler, true middle linebacker. Have a scouting report here. I have a source with Hutchinson Community College, which was where he went after Tennessee, and he was very, very good at that JUCO, one of the top JUCOs in the country, produced a ton of pros. And the source says he's awesome, good player, can run sideline to sideline, big energy guy, which I saw on tape as well. Has some pop behind the pads and can cover a running back or tight end. Probably not a good matchup with the slot and man coverage, though. Also good in underneath zone coverage. So, to me with Martavius French, it's all about the suspensions and making sure you're good with the character stuff. Because if you are, just from what I saw in that Texas game alone, and just looking at the production, he is more than ACC and Big 12 caliber. And those are the conferences he's looking at. I think you could put him right in to any of these schools, and he will be a starter and a leader on that defense day one with some NFL potential. Again, I was more impressed than I expected to be watching film of this player. Not knowing that he was a 4-star made sense after I kind of did some due diligence on him watching that game. But, if 6'2", 220, if it's a weakness, he is a little bit upright in his movements, but he's definitely not unathletic. He is pretty athletic, and he was always around the ball. A true sideline to sideline middle linebacker, tackling machine, who I think could be a really, really good player at any of those schools. And certainly all of those schools need help on defense. I know Miami has a major need at linebacker to get to the level they want to play at. I think he would probably be one of their top linebackers day one. Colorado's always on the hunt for front seven players. And Bill Belichick, he's defense first. So when you get the Bill Belichick seal of approval, that's meaningful. And certainly you had that here with Martavius French.
And you'd have to think that when he's going on these visits is as much of an interview from the coach's perspective as it is him getting recruited to these schools, right?
100%. That's the part that people don't talk about visits enough. Is it's a two-way street. And this goes for high school recruiting and portal, but probably even more so for portal because you have less of a knowledge of the player, right? You're kind of speed dating. So you're sizing up, first of all, the body type, because a lot of guys look a certain way on film. And I've talked to coaches about this. After some guy comes on a visit, they either say, wow, we better get this guy, or, this guy, I don't know if he's what we thought he was. So the body typing in person is huge on these visits. And then, of course, with guys that have multiple suspensions, that's part of the deal as well, trying to understand the character, understand the kid, understand exactly what happened, and just kind of get a feel for how this player would fit in your locker room. A lot of different coaches, right? Big personalities on his list. One of the most, like you said, the list of schools is probably almost as interesting as the player. But I think this is a player who can be an all-conference type middle linebacker based on what I saw in that Texas game and his ability to look very much like he belonged on the field with one of the best teams in the country.
So he's going to be visiting Miami here at the end of the week, has that UNC visit for the 6th and the 7th. So you'd expect his recruitment to draw into the early part of the year here and then enroll there pretty shortly thereafter in the 2nd or 3rd week of January. So that one we'll keep you guys updated here on Group Chat Football Live without a doubt. And it's tough to find highly productive linebackers with athletic ability like he has. You can find guys who racked up a bunch of tackles, but to say he also kind of fits what you're looking for in today's game at the position is why I think he's such an interesting guy on the market right now.
No question about it. And, switching gears to another part of the market, which to me is very interesting. There's been reports that Quinn Ewers and J.R. Godfather mentioned it here. We got a ton of people live. Appreciate everybody liking and subscribe. But he's saying, look, $6 million offered to Ewers from an unnamed school. This is some of the reporting that's coming out on Twitter right now. Darren Heitner said he heard as much as $10 million for a season. Those are high numbers. The numbers have escalated based on the fact that you now had the house settlement money, revenue money from, revenue sharing from the actual school as opposed to just outside collectives. So the total number for these quarterbacks has gone up. Personally, I have been involved with, involved is the wrong word, but I've been up to date certainly on the Cam Ward recruitment last year, which was a market setting type of recruitment from a transfer portal quarterback. Obviously it paid off for the Miami Hurricanes. They ended up having one of the best players in the country, and also having some exposure to John Mateer, who was a top portal quarterback this year, as far as guys who've already entered. So I could say unequivocally what the top of the market was last year with Cam Ward is different from what the market was with Mateer. That has gone up. The numbers reported for yours a significant step up from Mateer, right? So you might say Ewers is a much more accomplished player than Mateer, so his number should be higher. I got to say, the 10 million number to me seems remarkably high, unless that's UNC just spending kind of crazy
No,
money.
man, that's Texas Tech, man. They're trying to get the in-state rival there.
They got a quarterback. They got a
I know.
quarterback.
I'm messing around. We've been talking a lot about Texas Tech and how great they've done in the portal, and obviously they've had a big time commitment in terms of not only NIL but the coaching and paying the assistants and the infrastructure around the entire recruiting department and personnel has been impressive over there. So, we've been talking a lot about Texas Tech, but yeah, that's listen, the sources in these sort of situations always have to be considered. But that's what we're trending towards, these sort of numbers for the top end of the market. Yes.
Pete, I just sent you a link to Darren Heitner, someone who we know. So you know way more than me. I know more of him and mutual friends. I know you know Darren. So he's someone who's legitimately in this NIL space. As we pull up the tweet, the question is what is Ewers worth if he does come back, right? Obviously, he's got name recognition. You see there, Darren Heitner heard one school offered Quinn Ewers $10 million, certainly much more than he would make next year in the NFL. $6 million also would be more than he probably is going to make next year in the NFL. This is a guy who's had injuries. He hasn't, to me, looked the same from a velocity standpoint since his, abdominal injury. Some of his other injuries have sort of added up to the point where I don't see the same kind of juice from the arm. Still very good arm, still very accurate, natural passer. Of course, he has size and experience. And look, he has a chance to potentially win a national championship. So what a surreal situation that we're talking about. Number one, these kind of numbers. Number two, we're talking about a player who not only is not in the portal, he's playing for a national championship. He's in contention for it, right? He's in the tournament. So, and one of the favorites. So very, very interesting situation. If I'm speculating, and why not? Let's speculate. I think the high bidder here could be the University of North Carolina, because and this is pure speculation. This is not based on any reporting or anything like that. I don't think Miami is that team that they're talking about with that number. But, UNC is a team that they've gone, and if you look at their portal additions to this point, they've not been big ticket items. Right. So, but we know they were in the Mendoza sweepstakes. We know they're talking about having a lot of money, and they're obviously, if you don't hire Bill Belichick to play it safe. So if you're looking for a team that's looking for maybe instant credibility, selling the Tom Brady development, UNC Quinn Ewers, just from a financial standpoint, makes a lot of sense. From a football standpoint, him playing behind a rebuilt offensive line might be a little dicey, right? Given that he's had so many injuries and he's not the most mobile guy and sturdy guy when it comes to that pass rush. He's always had a great offensive line at Texas and still gotten injured. So I'm not sure that UNC is necessarily the fit, but that's a potential team you could see. As far as the big NIL spenders, some other teams that might make sense that are really looking to make a splash. Again, Miami's an obvious team. FSU has their quarterback. Pete, help me out here. I mean, who would be a fit? We've heard Notre Dame a lot for Ewers. Notre Dame's a team that has
also heard some Arch Manning Notre Dame as well.
Yeah, that sounds like fantasy football.
Yeah.
But Notre Dame, we did a show on it recently. Marcus Freeman said they're not after a portal quarterback. I like Angeli. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. Oregon is a school that's been linked to Quinn Ewers and has the deepest pockets of any team in college football right now. Do they like Jontay Moore enough, or do they say, listen, man, we like being number one. We're not sure on Moore.
What about a USC?
USC's another interesting one.
USC's been quiet in this quarterback discussion.
And they could sell a Ewers on the quarterback development from Lincoln Riley. Now, USC's offensive line also not the strongest, right? We just had Miller Moss and Jordan Mayava both struggle with the pass rush, right? So none of these are perfect fits. Miami makes a lot of sense in terms of they're going to have four of their offensive line starters returning. They're one of the top offensive lines in the country this year. Obviously, Cam Ward and the success he's had. But I don't see Miami offering $10 million for a Quinn Ewers. That to me seems like another team.
Well, an interesting one went off the market a couple days ago in terms of quarterback D with Walker White, the former Auburn quarterback, as he announced his decision to transfer to Baylor. And this was a Baylor team under Dave Aranda that really had a bounce back season this year after going 3-9 last year. And he was a big time recruit coming out of high school, number 3 dual threat in the rankings behind DJ Lagway, who we saw the success he had late in the season here, and just kind of helping Florida build onto their momentum for this offseason. And then Julian Sand at Ohio State, who was at Bama first, goes to Ohio State, and he's a guy who's a highly touted passer coming out. But Walker White here, as I'm going to pull up his huddle since he didn't play at Auburn last year, but talk about a guy with arm talent and athletic ability, with now the luxury most likely of coming to Baylor, and getting to sit a year and kind of learn the system.
Absolutely love this fit. I think it's one of the best fits of the portal season. So you look at Baylor's offense, like you mentioned, finishing extremely strong. Jake Spavital bringing in the Bear Raid offense, formerly Cal, Texas State. Really, really smart offensive guy and had instant results, 6-game winning streak, 34.7 points per game. And then Sawyer Robertson, he was outstanding. He mentioned over 2,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, 7 INTs. And what I like about this is you look at Walker White, 6'3", 225 from Little Rock, Arkansas. I mentioned he's a 4-star player. Struggled with interceptions a little bit in high school. Got better as a senior, but that was his bugaboo. He wasn't the most efficient passer, but his tools were just outstanding. I mean, the arm strength, the size, he can run. You see him jump over guys. There's Will Levis comps coming out of high school, which I can see just because of the physicality, the ability to run and throw with power. There you see the running basketball player. Again, just a total athlete. And you go to Auburn, if you're Walker White, you're a raw player, and they need help now. You saw what they did in the portal. They went and got win now type of guys. There you see the running ability. They got Deuce Knight out of high school who has a similar physical profile to Walker White. So he's probably saying, look, they're getting win now guys. I need to develop a little bit. And they brought in a young guy as well, who's even more highly touted than me. So what's my future at Auburn? But if you go to a Baylor, you can sit a year. So now you're not going to play most likely until your third year of college, which for a guy like Walker White, whose tools over polish, that is the right situation. You're going into an offense that's been productive. And then you look at Sawyer Robertson. Sawyer Robertson was a 4-star player, Mississippi State, another SEC guy, big-bodied, a lot of physical tools, but it didn't click for him at Mississippi State. Took a year at Baylor where he really didn't play certainly at the level and the amount of snaps that he played this year as the full-time starter. And then this year just completely blows up. So if you look at the Sawyer Robertson progression, you can see the exact same thing for a Walker White. And this is a guy that if it comes together, he could be a first-round type of quarterback. I'm not saying he will be a first-round type of quarterback. I'm saying look at these highlights. Look at the size. Look at the way the arm comes, the ball comes out of the hand. Look at the arm strength. Look at these throws on these outbreaking routes and the velocity, the athleticism. This is a guy with major, major tools. He just needs polish, and he's going to a perfect situation to polish up and then replace a quarterback that's exactly like him. I'll say exactly like him, but very similar to him. Perfect fit. Love everything about it. I think Baylor's a team that looked like they were going nowhere fast for a while, and now they have a clear direction and a future that goes beyond even their top offensive player right now in Sawyer Robertson, because he can move on and you could replace him with someone very, very similar.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you, is just like, man, what a bounce back year for them after that 3-win season. It looked like Aranda was on his way out for sure. And now you get an opportunity here in this bowl game against LSU to really finish the season with a bang. You're 8-4 right now, and they've won, I believe, 6 games in a row here to end the season off. So, the Big 12 is what it is right now, but they could be a team looking towards next year that could really be ascending.
No question. And look, we've seen ups and downs with this program. It's one of the programs where really it's gotten the highest of highs and then some of the lowest of lows in really all sports. But right now, the momentum is with them. I think Aranda has got himself off the hot seat, right? And now he could just focus on getting this team in the way he wants it to be. He doesn't need to be overly desperate in some of the things that he does. And again, this is a long-term type of move, an opportunistic type of move where you're not just saying, we need a quarterback, let's just get who's available. It's, hey, who fits what we're trying to do? Who has the upside to be a truly difference-making player down the road, an NFL-type player? And who's someone that, again, this is not going to be the flashiest addition of quarterbacks, but this might be down the road where you say, wow, I didn't know this guy even started at Auburn. I just saw him at Baylor throwing the ball over the place and looking big, looking like an NFL quarterback. So again, love the fit, love the upside of this guy. I'm a big believer in when you're in the portal and you're trying to get these highly rated players that maybe didn't work at their first spot, focus on tools, because you could develop these guys with less pressure, and then you get the benefit of the tools. Bo Nix, Jalen Daniels, Spencer Rattler, some guys that didn't work out their first stop, then ended up being outstanding players. Will Levis, a guy that was at Penn State at first, and then transferred to Kentucky and had his success and ended up being a second-round pick. All similar stories to what you're talking about here.
And we have some breaking news here that is regarding North Carolina and Bill Belichick, as Freddie Kitchens looks like he's going to be retained as the offensive coordinator. As Matt Zenitz reports, Belichick had already announced that Kitchens would still be on staff, but did not say which role. And of course, as the former head coach of the Browns, was the offensive coordinator, UNC's tight ends coach the last couple of years. So another guy with NFL experience, which is something that this Carolina staff is already, as we've seen publicly, talking about as one of their main recruiting pitches, as look, we're going to help you get to the next level, help develop you as NFL players, as an NFL program. Freddie Kitchens himself, when he did a press conference the other day, that's kind of what his message was. So Belichick sticks with the theme there, and Kitchens looks like he's going to be calling plays.
This fit just makes a ton of sense for a number of reasons. And I always talk about fit, both with portal and coaching, because it's not just about acquiring talent or acquiring big names. It's very much about the fit in college football. It has to be cohesive, right? And with a guy like Freddie Kitchens, if you're Bill Belichick, you're coming in with a total pro mindset. You've only been in the pros. You've never been in college. Not to mention you're an older guy, so you're pretty, you're not as malleable necessarily as maybe a younger coach. So you bring in a guy like Freddie Kitchens, who's not only is a 25-year coaching veteran, but he had a 16-year run in the NFL, including as a head coach with the Cleveland Browns. So you say, okay, he speaks my language as a pro guy. I can speak about pro things with him, and I don't have to translate. He understands. At the same time, he's been in the college game. He was an analyst at South Carolina, and he was also, of course, at UNC. So he can tell me about the college game. And then the most important part is he knows this particular team and this particular program. Right. So he knows the personnel. He knows some of the challenges. He can help Bill Belichick avoid some of the pitfalls that come just by experience and, learning the program and learning some of the things that aren't on paper that you just have to kind of live through to understand some of the nuances, whether it's boosters or whatever it is. So you have a perfect bridge to this program, to the college game, while still maintaining that sort of pro mindset. So this is a very, very smart hire, I think, by Bill Belichick. You saw at New England towards the end, some of the staffing hires that he made hurt him. And they were maybe, I don't want to say they were egotistical, but he was at such a point of power that he just kind of said, I'm going to do what I want. And he maybe overstepped, like a Matt Patricia as an offensive coordinator, things that just ended up backfiring for him. This to me was just a sensible move. It wasn't like I know everything. It was, okay, I don't know that much about this program I just inherited. I don't know as much about the college game, but I know I want to bring a pro-style approach to this game. So instead of just hiring someone straight out the pros, you're getting a bridge-type person who is going to help you, more run game-oriented than pass game-oriented, at least at the college level. He was a run game coordinator for UNC. So, I don't know if they're going to bring in someone maybe to be a transfer. Or sorry, I just got a breaking news on some other another tweet. But someone to maybe be a passing game coordinator to bring that insight into the offensive room, with Kitchens more on the running game side. Obviously he knows the passing game, being in the pros for that long, being an offensive coordinator, working with Baker Mayfield when he was a rookie, having an outstanding year. He was a running back coach in the NFL, so really that's more his strength. But the work with Baker put him on the map nationally. So he's somebody who I think is a humble and sensible choice by Bill Belichick to do what he wants, big picture, making a pro team in college without acting like he knows everything.
Right. B. Correa asking any Miami intel. Appreciate you for joining us today. We did our live show on Canes Insight earlier today for about an hour. Obviously, big news there is Miami's D coordinator Lance Gidgey was fired. So we did a whole show there. We did talk some portal there as well. And then if you're just joining us now, in the beginning of the show, we spoke about Martavius French, linebacker, who's actually going to be visiting Miami. So if you want to rewind, if you're just joining us now, we did talk about that. So appreciate everyone who's on with us now on Group Chat Football Live.
Yeah, by the way, Elijah Arroyo just declared for the draft for those looking for some Miami news. No surprise there. I think he's probably the top tight end in the country. I mean, I've seen him since he was a freshman, so maybe I'm biased in that way, but I do think his size, his speed, which is unique among tight ends, his willingness to block, his route running is going to make him a really, really premium player here in the Senior Bowl practices. Tyler Warren, he's a complete stud, Heisman candidate. And Colson Loveland from Michigan is going to be a high pick as well. But don't sleep on Elijah Arroyo, who just went pro. I think he's going to be only going up as we get to the combine, as we get to pro days, and of course the Senior Bowl practices.
So next move to talk about here actually happened a couple days ago. One of the top wide receivers who was in the portals off the market, Jontay Cook, former 5-star recruit coming out, started his career at Texas, left the team midway through the season, and he's signing with Washington. It was obviously a rebuilding year with DeBoer headed to Alabama, and Jedd Fisch comes in there, but I think you started to see some of the signs of what they're trying to build there. A ton of the roster. It was a completely new team there, obviously. So Washington looks like a program who's starting to little by little rebuild that group into what it needs to be in terms of talent. And Jontay Cook is a great start there at the wide receiver spot.
Lot of juice with Jontay Cook. I remember watching him against UTSA, and he was like shot out of a rocket on some of those catches. 6 foot 185 from Dallas, Texas to Soto High School. Like you said, former 5-star. He was on the freaks list for 247, 22 and 1 inch long jump, 42 and 11.5 inch triple jump. Just a super explosive guy. He was expected to play a big role, but then you look at the guys in that room for Texas: Isaiah Bond transfer, Matthew Golden transfer, DeAndre Moore, Silas Bolden, and then Ryan Wingo, the true freshman, coming in and doing what he did. But I think Matt Doherty and the crew in Washington and the recruiting department, Jedd Fisch, outstanding job plucking this player out of Texas. He's not a Pacific Northwest guy, so this was really a recruiting job. And you look at Washington's history, whether it's Jedd Fisch, who's there now, and of course, Coach McMillan at Arizona, going to be a first-round receiver this next year. And then you just look at the program of Washington and the great receivers they had before this new staff came in. There's a lot of receiver tradition to sell to Jontay Cook. Obviously, you're selling a much bigger role. We'll see how that quarterback situation unravels, at Washington. But I think the speed and explosiveness of Jontay Cook is going to be on display. And you've seen guys from these crowded rooms go elsewhere and make a huge, huge impact. Of course, the most prominent one would be a Jamison Williams going from Ohio State to Alabama and then becoming a first-round pick for Alabama. And you've seen him in the pros. He's one of the most dynamic players in the pros. I'm not saying this is that exact situation, but there's precedent for these crowded rooms losing some dynamic athletes. Maybe their route running or something is just not exactly up to par yet, so they're not getting the snaps they want. But then you put them on a team where they can kind of play through mistakes, and that explosiveness really, really plays up. Damon Williams, Jr. is a true freshman. He had his ups and downs, but I thought overall he was impressive to me. 76% completion percentage, 7.8 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks. Did struggle with some sacks, but interesting guy, young playmaker who could grow. And if you want to grow your young quarterback, the 5'11", 187-pounder from Chandler, Arizona, you give him some playmakers. And Jontay Cook is certainly that, especially for a young guy who wants to chuck it up or maybe throw screens, easier throws for him. A guy like this with that explosiveness is going to make it easy.
I was gonna. This is what I was gonna get to. You mentioned what a big recruiting win it was for Washington, and there was a lot of talk here in Florida that the Gators had an inside track on his recruitment. A lot of momentum for them this offseason with the way they finished the season. DJ Lagway, although he wasn't lighting the box scores up, his talent is evident, right? So you understand there's a lot to build there. But Florida finished really strong in terms of recruiting the wide receiver position. Obviously, Vernell Brown, Dallas Wilson was a late add there. I wonder if that had something to do with Cook going the other way.
I think it's a smart move by Cook. Jedd Fisch is an offensive guy, right? This guy was in the pros for many, many years, has a lot of success. Like if you really look at, Williams to Cook, it's not Williams is very similar to what Jetfish had with Fafita and all the success
Mhm.
he had. Cook is a different type of receiver than McMillan. McMillan is a tall, contested catch guy. Cook is a truly explosive guy. But you can see that's dynamic getting recreated here with two young players that can grow together with a play caller that knows what to do with them and less, of a crowd at receiver.
Right.
So I think that this is a fit that just makes a lot of sense for Cook. I thought it was a pretty smart decision for him. If you're going to your third year, you need the ball. You got to play, right? You got to play. You're going to be the Big Ten. You're going against great defenses. I like the fit. If he would have gone Florida, there would have been a lot of mouths to feed there. And even if he was the best guy, you're still going to get the ball to the other guys. Here, I think he's got a much clearer chance to be a prominent player with a guy that really knows what to do with top receivers in Jed Fish.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, look, it's a situation where, like you said, it's year 3, man. Like if it doesn't work now, then it's probably not going to work anywhere. So you got to go somewhere where you're going to be featured. And not to say he could have been that at Florida, but yeah, more mouths to feed.
And look,
So,
deep balls, quick hitters. Let this guy use that explosiveness. What makes him special, based on what I've seen in high school and what I saw limited time at Texas, again, the UTSA game being probably his most prominent. I was actually watching it yesterday because I was watching French, and we talked about it a little earlier, right? The linebacker for UTSA. So I watched that game last night, and he just, again, he looks shot out of a cannon on some of these plays because of that explosiveness, which you see in the long jump numbers, the triple jump numbers. Get him the ball on screens, get him the ball downfield, use his athletic ability while you polish him up as a route runner.
So we'll stay on the West Coast here as Oregon, man. They continue to do pretty much, it seems like, what they want in the transfer portal, as they've picked up momentum to pick up Makhi Hughes from Tulane. And man, you talk about Tulane, John Summerall, head coach, decides to come back, and how do his top guys reward him? He loses his quarterback, Darian Mensah, to Duke, and now Makhi Hughes, he's been in the portal for a bit now, but it looks like he's trending towards Oregon here. Very interesting thing to note. Naeem offered, for the 5-star recruit who signed with Oregon this signing day a few weeks back, is his younger brother, and he actually flipped from Ohio State to Oregon on signing day. So the connection is obvious there. This thing probably has been in motion for some time now. But you talk about Hughes, and right now he's the number 3 ranked player in the transfer portal. This is not official yet, but it looks like it's trending in that direction. And productive, versatile running backs are always something that are going to be a hot commodity in the portal.
Yeah, Makhi Hughes, 5'11", 210, number 3 overall player in the portal. You look at his numbers the last 2 years: 2,779 yards, 22 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry. He sat out his first year due to injury, was not a big recruit, 85th ranked running back coming out of Alabama, but didn't have any offers from Auburn, Alabama, none of those schools, no SEC schools. But when you watch him, again, sat out the first year to injury, then 2 years in a row, over 1,000 yards. He is very much a pure running back. He's not a guy that's going to win a track meet. He's not huge, but his vision is absolutely outstanding. His patience. He is somebody that has contact balance. He can make guys miss in the hole. He can make guys miss at the second level. He always square to the end zone. When you talk about your traditional tailback, that is what he is. He's not like a Jahmyr Gibbs that you're going to move around a million places and try to get the ball in his hands as a dynamic player. And he's not, like Garrett Blunt. This is a guy who is going to get a lot of carries. Tulane was a very run-heavy offense. You saw some I formation, just sort of old-school offense with Tulane, and this was the workhorse. I think you look at Oregon, they had a good running game this year. Not like a dominant running game, but a very solid one, 27th in the country with 4.9 yards a carry. I'm sure they'd love to crank that number up closer to that 5.5, 5.6 range, maybe in 6.2 range, closer to like a Notre Dame or Miami. Mm-hmm. Not that Oregon has a ton of needs, but there's always room to improve. And you had Jordan James this year, 1,000+ yard runner, potentially going on to the NFL. You could replace him with another 1,000-yard runner and potentially elevate that game, that running game even more, because Oregon they're going for him, man. This is not going to be a cheap player. This is a player that if you get him, obviously there's the brother connection, but I doubt there's going to be much of a hometown discount. So you get this guy, he's going to be an expensive dude. And I think he'd be worth it for what they need because he's a proven guy, and you put him behind that offensive line, and he's going to be just churning up yards.
Yeah, and Oregon, it's going to be kind of a reshaped offensive line, but they've picked up a couple guys there already, so it's going to be a bit different. We understand it's going to be a new quarterback as well, but they've got a lot of talent there, and we understand that Dan Lanning and his staff has done a really good job developing a lot of those guys, and they just, when you watch them, they look like a well-coached football team.
And look, Bucky Irving, you've seen what he's done in the pros, so this is becoming now, I won't say like a running back factory like Alabama and Georgia were, in recent years, but if you're a productive, maybe not, again, physically supreme back, but someone who knows how to run and can make guys miss and can make plays, this offense will be for you. Dan Lanning, he's a defensive guy at heart, so he loves to run if he can. Of course, he's at Dylan Gabriel, so he's been airing it out, but and Bo Nix, right? So he's had quarterbacks that they're going to pass a lot, but at his heart, he wants to control the game with the running game. We'll see how these playoffs turn out and where Oregon turns to when they really, really need to win some of these tough games, starting with Ohio State tomorrow. But this is a player that I think fits like a glove. Of course, his brother's there, who we're going to talk about as one of the top performers in the Under Armour game here coming up. But listen, man, Oregon, when it's going good, it's going good. And it's going great for Oregon. And this is just another bit of good news. Not official yet. Again, this is just where it's trending. But all signs point, when you look at NIL budget, they have the biggest. Their brother's there. The fit's there. It just makes a lot of sense that Hughes winds up at the University of Oregon.
Well, we have a bit of breaking news here regarding a couple guys that we were just talking about on the show, D. And we were talking about Quinn Ewers and the potential $6 to $10 million offer out there. We were just talking about Jontay Cook, who's transferring to Washington. And Jontay Cook, who played with him at Texas, has his thoughts on the offer that's being reported. He said it's a waste of money. He said, wasting y'all money for real. So that's
listen,
that's what he says about Quinn Ewers. Is again, this is purported.
Strong words. I don't love doing that. You're at Washington, right? You're trying to get your career going. I mean, Ewers has done more in his career than Cook has to this point. So, to me, if I'm Cook, I'm focusing on the quarterback I have and trying to be the best player I can be. I'm not sure that's the right approach, but yeah, look, that's a lot of money for a guy that's not a Heisman candidate quarterback. But we'll see. We'll see where how this thing ends up. He's trying to win a national championship right now, so a lot going on.
Yeah, no, everyone's talking about Arch Manning, him, whether he's going to come back. I mean, it's a lot going. Now Sam Levitt on the other side, he didn't take the bait in the press there about Levitt saying that he wanted to prove he's a better quarterback than him. So, it's a lot going on media-wise, but Ewers has dealt with this for years as the number one guy coming out of high school and then doing what he did going to Ohio State and all that stuff. So, but we'll wrap things up here with one of our favorite times of year, D, and that is the All-American game circuit and these practices. You have obviously the Army All-American game, the Under Armour game, and the Army All-American practices started yesterday. As you see this picture of Travis Hunter from a few years ago in the graphic there when he played in the game. But these are always great ways. They're level playing fields, right? These guys aren't in pads in these practices, but this is the last time that they get in front of these evaluators, and it gets competitive because they're battling to help themselves in the rankings at the end of the year, which, look, everyone can argue how much these star rankings matter, but to these kids, it does matter. It's a point of pride, right? Now, once they get to the next level, all that stuff's out the window, but they really do compete here. So this is always a great opportunity at the end of your senior year. There's so much development that goes on from junior to senior year to see these guys up close. So just wanted to get into some of these top performers from people that have been out there practices. We obviously haven't been out there, but have had a chance to look at some of these clips and some impressive stuff all around.
Yeah, so let's start with Elijah Griffin, right? This is the number three overall player in the country. Certainly not a sleeper. Somebody that we've watched for a while because it's been so obvious this guy was a top player. He did not play the best competition in Savannah, small private school. He dominated it, but you didn't see him going against the absolute best. So taking a guy like this who's an obvious physical stud and putting him against players that are hit close to his size, to me, is very, very interesting. And he's done exactly what he's supposed to do, being named the top performer of the day by On3. Just a fluid athlete, incredibly coordinated for a bigger guy. His balance is outstanding. Makes a lot of plays in the backfield. He's physical as well. He can knock you back. He's just a big body, not a lot of fat on him. He looks the part. But I think his game, when I say finesse, I don't mean finesse in terms of soft. I mean finesse in terms of he can go around you so smooth because of that coordination and because of that just overall athletic ability. And I think the fact that he's continued that dominance and he was extremely productive in high school, which not, some of these 5-star or 4-star defensive tackles are more traits than production. This is a guy that's both. And now you're seeing it against great competition. So good sign if you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan to see Elijah Griffin be the top performer day one. He is someone who could be a day one contributor. Now, like defensive tackle is a hard position to play early, but this is a different kind of player. And look, if I'm comping him based on what I've seen, I'm comping to a guy that I saw when he was down here in Florida, and that is Jalen Carter, the Floridian who went up to Georgia and ended up being a superstar there, of course, now with the Philadelphia Eagles. The same coordination, fluidity, great body type. I see a lot of similarities between Carter and Elijah Griffin.
Yeah, that flexibility is ridiculous at that size. The fluidity, the way he drops his hips. You saw him, moving around those cones, and it's incredible stuff at that age and that size. The next guy, who we already kind of referenced a moment ago, talking about his brother Makhi Hughes, Naeem Offord at cornerback. And this is a guy who, from a physical trait standpoint, he really has it all, but played against some of the best competition in the country in Alabama, there in Birmingham. You see the size here up close. I mean, he looks like someone who could be playing big-time college football in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and he is extremely explosive. You're talking about an 11-foot plus broad jump, which that is a pro number at corner. And corner really is a traits position. This is a two-way player, somebody who I think really his ranking outpaced his production at first. Not that he wasn't productive, but he's someone that's gotten even better and better on the field. He's always been a fluid, explosive athlete, two-way player. Played alongside Tim Merritt, who went to Tennessee as a corner. What a cornerback combo they had there. And he is a number 11 overall player and has been named the top performer. Again, this is not one thing about these all-star games is not everything translates, right? It's hard to judge who the best linebackers and running backs are. We'll talk about one in a second, but this is really more of a showcase, in my view, for tackles and ends because they're going one-on-one, and then wide receivers and corners because they are going one-on-one, right? So when you see this guy covering the top receivers in the country at the Under Armour, it means something because you can't see the tackling, but you're seeing, press, you're seeing the fluidity, the back pedal, the change of direction, the instincts. I mean, that's there. That doesn't change that much to the college level and to games. So you're seeing his one-on-one coverage ability. And, for tackles, and we'll talk about an offensive tackle in a second, you're seeing that one-on-one as well. So to me, when you got to take some of this with a grain of salt, but corners, I always pay attention to who looks good at corner at these all-star games because they're doing a lot of things that they do at the next level. And for Naeem Offord, a tremendous start here as the top corner at practices. Oregon is getting a really, really talented corner there.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you mentioned that we'll talk about a tackle here, and that's going to be Michael Fasusi. I mean, talk about physical freaks, which is what everyone wants at the highest level here at those tackle spots. And I think tackles can really get exposed easily in these one-on-one settings where there's no pads. Yeah, you can get your hands on these faster, lighter, quicker defensive ends, but without the pads, it doesn't really play to these big tackles strengths necessarily. And when you see some of the stuff with Fasusi, and you see how smooth he looks out there, as this tweet mentions. I mean, I'll pull up some other stuff, but you see the size there, you see the movement, and then this is just, this is very basic stuff, but right there you see how he gets into his stance and he's moving.
Yeah, and this is a physical freak to the bone. I mean, Fasusi is originally from Nigeria, grew up playing soccer, then goes to the Dallas area. A lot of people of Nigerian descent in that area. I know you recruited that area, Pete, when you were an agent, and this is exactly what the doctor ordered if you are Oklahoma, a team that's been built on offensive line play for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And then you've gone through a period now where you had the worst offensive line probably in the SEC this year. That's just not like Oklahoma. So you add a guy like Fasusi with incredibly long arms, that soccer footwork. Number 11 on 247's Freakless. So it tells you about some of the athletic ability. It's 31 and 7-inch vert. He front squatted 405 pounds 3 times on the track, 52 and 2.5-inch shot put, 155 5-inch discus. So the throwing ability, the power right through his hands. Number 13 overall player in the country. But this is somebody, look, a lot of times you see these guys, they're ranked that high because of traits. And you put them against top competition and they look out of their depth. For him to already be able to hold his own against some of these top guys before he even gets coached there at OU, I think is a very, very positive development because the physical stuff is there. You don't expect to be perfect. You just don't want to look like a total fish out of water. And to be a top performer, you're feeling pretty good if you're OU because you absolutely need this guy to hit.
Yeah, and you see, I mean, again, this is just it's limited stuff in terms of movement, but the coordination at that size is so impressive, and the footwork looks really good as well.
Yeah, Pete. I mean, you look, you're a soccer guy, man. I know you're big into African soccer as well. So
no, and I mean, look, I've represented a first round tackle, right tackle in the NFL, and Titus Howard, and the footwork technically, obviously, who if he's going to Oklahoma, but when he gets there, there's going to be work to do. But he's got what it takes in terms of the ability to do it.
Yeah, and he's going to get great coaching there. So that to me is one to watch as the week goes on. Sometimes these guys start slow and then build up, especially the raw, more athletic guys. So maybe he has even more in the tank just from this set of practices alone. So that's one to watch as the week goes on. See if he keeps ascending and maybe makes a push to be a top 10 overall player in the country.
And then the last guy we'll highlight here, I chose him, D, because he was a little bit off the radar to me. And after watching some of his highlights from Huddle, right? And then when you see a linebacker who stands out in these practices, it always says a lot to me because those guys sometimes, again, in these practice situations can be overmatched athletically. And Caleb Burns is a guy on his way to Baylor, another program we spoke about earlier in today's show, who really stood out to me as I'm going to pull up his Huddle here.
Yeah, the thing that jumped out, he lists an 11-1-800 meter. You could kind of see that here on his Huddle, and that's something that was talked about from On3, just seeing him move around. The athletic ability, that's what's going to stand out in an all-star game setting when you're not out there running and thumping. But this guy, Baylor's known more so under Matt Rule, but Aranda is no stranger to this type of recruiting as well. They're known for getting very, very good athletes, right? Guys that can run. This is a track runner. You see it on the field. And when you have a linebacker that actually plays linebacker, he's not a conversion guy that can already run, that's already productive, and look at that burst, man, and then the balance to finish. A lot of guys just jump on that ball. He picks it up and takes it in stride to the house. I was shocked to see this guy as a low 4-star, high 3-star when you watch the tape. And I think Baylor really, really got a steal. And this is the kind of guy that Baylor needs, man. Baylor needs a player who the Texas schools missed that has spectacular traits. You see, those guys used to go to TCU. They used to go to Baylor.
Well, right? Jalen Petrie. I'm getting Jalen Petrie vibes from this guy.
Yeah, obviously different position, but Texas has got a lot of guys, man, and there's always guys that can run. Maybe they're a little small, and this is not a small player, but he's not 6'3", 240.
Well, listen, this is how Baylor used Petrie a lot of different ways defensively, and I think they're not too far off in size. He's probably a little bit bigger than him, but no, he's a versatile type of defensive player, man.
And you see him bend. His bend is nice, man. He can get around there. Look at that. I mean, that's not just speed and size. That's pass rush to be able to bend and get around with that sort of efficiency. And then look, that's just straight linebacker play right there, off ball linebacker play, running through the tackle. I was shocked when I saw his name. I'm with you. I had seen it, but I didn't really, pay much attention to him as a recruit. And then you see him getting listed with the top 10 performers, and you turn on the tape and you say, wow, this guy might be a complete steal for Baylor, because he shows not just one thing on tape, but multiple things that translate to the next level. And if you're playing in the Big 12, there's not too many guys that are running and tackling like this.
Yeah, and a guy who I think could be really helpful in terms of like QB spy and containing these guys who can move around in the pocket and extend plays, right? So interesting one there, man. Caleb Burns, really liked what I saw there. And again, when a linebacker sticks out at these practices, it always kind of is something that I like to keep on my radar. So that's a good get there for Baylor. Dave Aranda making things happen there, as it looked like a year ago at this time. His job was kind of in jeopardy.
Yeah, no, the momentum. So him and Napier, man, the momentum shifted tremendously, and hope it keeps going, man, because you want to see that program succeed and continue to build and give you another interesting program there in the Big 12.
Man, we appreciate everyone who's been on with us today. Great live audience, great comments all day long. And yes, I wanted to get to this comment that, yeah, Shaboy Kane says, is this a new channel, fellas? Yes, it is. Welcome to Group Chat Sports. This is our daily show, Group Chat Football Live, where we talk portal movement across the country, coaching movement. And yes, understand you're a Canes fan. Know about us from Canes Insight. So appreciate you coming over here and watching this. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, really helps us grow. So we appreciate everyone who's been here with us early on in the growth of the channel. It's really it's been fun, and man, we've been doing this for almost a month now, D, and excited for the new year.
Absolutely, man. See you guys later.